Everyone, good evening. I'm Shreya Dhoundial. It is day 11 of the Gulf War, and the Pentagon has just confirmed that they have launched what is their fiercest attack inside Iran. In fact, Tehran is reporting heavy strikes as we speak. They're saying these overnight strikes have even hit civilian areas in Tehran. Ladies and gentlemen, war is no laughing matter. Children get killed, families get destroyed, nations get crippled. The cynical may argue that it is what a war is about. But should the president of a country be having fun at the cost of war? Ladies and gentlemen, there is epic fury over President Trump telling Republicans, his own party men, that his team thought it was way more fun to sink Iranian ships than to capture them. What was perhaps even more eye-opening is the laughter from the audience that followed the performance. Take a look.
The Navy is gone. It's all lying at the bottom of the ocean. 46 ships. Can you believe it? In fact, I got a little upset with our people. I said, what quality of ship? Excellent, sir. Top of the line. I said, why did we just capture the ship? We could have used it. Why did we sink them? They said, it's more fun to sink them. I said, that's a... They like sinking them better. They say it's safer to sink them. I guess it's probably true.
Trump there has claimed that 46 Iranian ships have been sunk. One of them was torpedoed in our very backyard, the Indian Ocean. Iris Dena was a guest of India. It was not armed for war. At least 104 sailors were killed. It's a tragedy of war, not a video game where people get killed just because some people are having fun. There has also been a lot of tomfoolery from President Trump on the massacre in Minab, where American Tomahawk missiles struck a school and killed 168 people. 110 of them, ladies and gentlemen, were schoolgirls aged between 7 and 12. Trump has stunningly claimed first that the Iranians hit their own school. Today, when asked about clear evidence of these Tomahawks striking the school, Trump came up with another bizarre theory, saying that the American-made missile was being used by the Iranians against their own school children. Listen in.
An American missile strike and a Tomahawk missile likely destroyed that Iranian girls' school. So will the U.S. accept any responsibility?
Well, I haven't seen it, and I will say that the Tomahawk, which is one of the most powerful weapons around, is used by, is sold and used by other countries, you know that. And whether it's Iran, who also has some Tomahawks, I wish they had more, but whether it's Iran or somebody else, the fact that a Tomahawk is very generic, it's sold to other countries, but that's being investigated right now.
110 schoolgirls, ladies and gentlemen, die. Evidence is clear that the Americans did it. From the president, the attempt to say we didn't do it, and from his war secretary now an attempt to justify that attack. Listen in to what Pete Hegseth has said today.
The mullahs are desperate and scrambling. Like the terrorist cowards they are, they fire missiles from schools and hospitals, deliberately targeting innocents, because they know their military is being systematically degraded and annihilated. Iran's neighbors, and in some cases, former allies in the Gulf, they've abandoned them. And their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, either broken, ineffective, or on the sidelines. Iran stands alone, and they are badly losing.
Ladies and gentlemen, as the Americans continue to have fun sinking ships, the world is sinking in despair with the oil shock. The question now being asked, when will this war end? President Trump, who last week had said only an unconditional surrender by the Iranian regime will end the war, has changed his mind multiple times since then. First, listen to what he told Republicans last night.
Better, stronger, and our country is doing really well. I mean, at a level that nobody thought. We took a little excursion because we felt we had to do that to get rid of some evil. And I think you'll see it's going to be a short-term excursion. How good is our military, right? Amazing. How good. Short-term. Short term. Thank you. They're great.
Short term, you heard him say that. Then he told CBS News, and I quote, "The war is very much complete." And then by evening, he had changed his mind again and said, "We haven't won enough. We are going to go further." Mixed messaging, which even his war secretary today had difficulty explaining.
From this podium, we haven't stated how long it will take. Our will is endless. Ultimately, the president gets to determine the end state of those objectives, right? But what he's said continually, and I want the American people to understand, is this is not endless. It's not protracted. We're not allowing mission creep. The president has set a very specific mission to accomplish, and our job is to unrelentingly deliver that. Now, he gets to control the throttle. He's the one deciding, he's the one elected on behalf of the American people when we're achieving those particular objectives. And so it's not for me to posit whether it's the beginning, the middle, or the end. That's his, and he'll continue to communicate that. What we serve him as is we give him updates on a daily basis of exactly where we are so he can make that determination on the throttle.
What is the American view on the president and President Trump's fun way of handling the Iran war? And do the Americans really have an exit strategy in Iran? That's my question this evening. Thank you very much to our guests who are joining us from America. Peter Kuznick is an author, also a professor of history, joining us on the broadcast. Hi, Peter. Good evening. Angie Wong is a Trump supporter. She's at the Miami GOP committee. Angie, thank you very much for your time here on Times Now. Always good to have you on the show. Angie, I'm going to start with you. If the president of a country that has launched a war on another country amongst his own people says, "My team is having way more fun sinking Iranian ships than actually capturing them," does that make them war criminals in your eyes?
No, I was with President Trump yesterday, and when he said those words, you have to understand the audience that he was talking to. It was a Congressional Institute conference, all Republicans. They were there fundraising. It was a very lighthearted event, less policy, although I'm sure he knows that, you know, the world's cameras were rolling as he was saying those words. He gets to be the showsman, whereas Pete Hesteth and others have to kind of clean up his mess and his words sometimes. But that's President Trump. He goes all over the place. We love him as the chaos president, but the reality is he really does believe phase one of these conflicts is almost completed, and mainly because he's sunk 50 naval ships of the Iranian Navy and countless amounts of aircraft. So I think in his mind, things are under control.
Angie, I understand that he was playing to a gallery there. I completely understand that. But war is no light-hearted matter. And when the president of America steps out in front of rolling cameras and says that sinking Iranian ships is way more fun than capturing them, what impression do you think it leaves on people, for example, in India who are watching him speak?
And I understand the international audience does not understand that he was making a joke, and often he's doing that. But again, he's not being statesmanly there, but he's acting for the crowd that he is with. Ultimately, he doesn't want to see this. He wants to see the end of an endless war. We've been actually in a very slow-burning war for decades with Iran. They keep wishing us death to America. He needs that to stop. And that's what this is about. He wants an endless war to finally be over. And many U.S. presidents have shied away from actually dealing with Iran. This time around, he realizes this is his last term. He has to get it done.
Peter, would you want to come in here? Essentially, what Angie is arguing is that, you know, for an international audience, they probably didn't get the joke. What the president was doing was simply joking with an audience that supports him.
They got the joke. The president is a clown. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. Angie knows that. She knows better than this. The man is a moral imbecile. And the fact that somebody who's that sick, that unhinged, has not only access to America's arsenal, but also its nuclear arsenal, terrifies everybody. This is a man who, in the middle of a White House Christmas event, goes with friends and family, goes off on a 6-minute tangent about poisonous snakes in Peru. And he says that they killed 28,000 people a year in poisonous snake bites. 28,000. So people looked it up. You know how many people have died in the last 15 years from poisonous snake bites in Peru? 10. I mean, this is a man who's got no grasp on truth, and he's surrounded by a group of really dangerous people. Hegseth, you know, we've got all these reports coming out from the Military Religious Freedom Foundation.
Correct.
About on more than 50 bases, that people are talking about this bloody end time and Christ's return in the second, you know, in Armageddon. And this is what's out there. But that's Hegseth's got these tattoos all over his body. And then you got Marco Rubio, who won't stand up to him. Stephen Genghis Miller, who says it's the law of the jungle. We have to use force. And Trump himself, who says, what can stop me? He says, only my own morality, my own mind. This is a very dangerous situation. And yeah, he can blow ships up. We can blow things up. The U.S. military is very capable. It's very potent. But from a moral standpoint, internationally, the United States is not looked on in any way as a moral leader. It's looked on as the king of the jungle. And that it's going to use force.
Angie, increasingly, President Trump is ensuring that, you know, he makes Khomeini look like the good guy. I'll tell you why. First, there is clear evidence now that it was the American Tomahawk missiles that hit a school in Minab in Iran and killed 168 people. Of these, 110 were girls. It could have been a mistake. But the Americans have said, the president is going on record to say we didn't do it first. The Iranians did it. When clear evidence emerged of the Tomahawk missiles hitting the school, you've heard what the president has said. What sort of tomfoolery is this? You know, the Americans are the ones that make the Tomahawk missiles. They only export it to 4 or 5 countries. Iran is not one of them. And for the president to step out and tell the press, members of the press, that these are generic Tomahawk missiles that are with Iran, that have bombed their own school? How does that even make sense, Angie?
Well, right now we're still in the fog of war, and both sides are going to point the fingers at each other for tragedies like this. Yes, a school should never be hit, but time and time again, especially in the Middle East, so often there are command centers, there are weapon storage next to schools and hospitals, and we've seen it everywhere in the Middle East. So it could have been a missed target. We don't know. There's going to have to be forensics and an investigation done before we point fingers. Now, I have to just I've been covering Trump for years now. And whenever he becomes lighthearted, makes jokes, things like that, it is messaging. It actually is part of warfare. I think a lot of people misread him. He's trying to signal, we have this. This war is easy. We're sinking ships. Who is he talking to? He's talking to Putin and he's talking to Xi Jinping. He is delivering a message to them because he's going to have a big meeting with Xi Jinping later this month for a U.S.-China trade deal. He wants to make sure that he understands we can keep going here and we can keep choking you of necessary resources going into China, such as the petrol that's stuck in the Straits of Hormuz, right? So he is definitely playing. He knows that he's being watched. And who's he being watched by? Well, his adversaries.
Okay, but is this how you want to be watched? You know,
I think that's part of warfare.
Doing tomfoolery about a Tomahawk missiles hitting a girls' school, killing 110 girls. Peter, would you want to come in here for one? Do you have any grip on what a generic Tomahawk missile means? A Tomahawk missile is a Tomahawk missile. I don't know what the generic Tomahawk missile is that President Trump here was referring to. That seems to be in Iran's hands.
But you have to realize Trump doesn't know what he's talking about either. I mean, that's what's so scary at the moment. I'm regularly on Chinese TV, Russian TV, as well as a lot of other countries, and they are appalled by what's going on. And they realize more and more that they're not dealing with a rational actor. And that's part of it. You know, Trump told a series of lies about why the U.S. got into this war, why the U.S. provoked an illegal an unconstitutional war, and again, that defies international law. And he said, number one, that Iran had restarted their uranium processing. The IAEA says nonsense. It's not true. Number two, that Iran was rushing toward a nuclear weapon, and they'd have it within a couple of weeks, he said. You know, they were years away if they even had or not at least a year away if they even had a program, and which the Khamenei, who the U.S. killed, has a fatwa against Iran developing nuclear weapons. I don't know about his son. I don't know about the other leaders there, the IRGC, but we know that Khamenei did. And the CIA said they had given up their nuclear weapons program in 2003. Then he said they're very soon going to have an intercontinental ballistic missile that could hit the United States. His own Defense Intelligence Agency said that they're at least 10 years away from that.
Okay.
So, you know, any time he opens his mouth, you never know what's going to come out. If it's going to be, as Angie says, a joke or a lighthearted comment, or it's going to be a lie. But in any case, it shows the cruelty, the indifference, the suffering. You know, as we know that no Trump has ever gone into a war zone, but he's telling all the ships to have some courage and go through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, you know, old bone spurs Donald Trump is hardly the one to tell other people to have courage.
Angie, my last question to you is about whether the Americans have an exit plan. If you just listen to what President Trump has said in the last 24 hours, you'd be as confused as I am, and I'm fairly certain you've heard him. So he says short term, very short term. Then he says we have not won enough. We are going to go further. Then Pete Hegseth comes and says Americans are going to end this on their own timeline. What does that mean?
Okay, so President Trump has a short window to actually end phase one of this war. 3 reasons: oil prices, the number of soldiers, casualties, the American soldiers dying, and 3, the midterms. So he needs to get in and exit as soon as possible. What he means is phase one of this war. The few times that the U.S. has entered the Middle East, we stay there for a very long time. But phase one, which is mainly the strikes, that I predict will have to end pretty soon, mainly because the Iranian military has pretty much been decimated. Once that is secure, the Straits of Hormuz is cleared out and ships are moving again, I think we're going to start seeing phase one phase off. Now, Pete Hegseth, he's not going to leave the region just for, you know, everything to go back to the way it was. So he's going to start phase two, which is, I believe, if I had to interpret what he means, that's what's going to happen. And look at Afghanistan. We were there for years, right? But the troops remained, the very, very small numbers of them. But, you know, we have to make sure that the region is stabilized and it does not go back to the wrong hands, things like that. So I think that's the interpretation I take away from the two men.
Okay, but my limited point here will be that if Iran's military was completely decimated, how come they are still in a position to fire at oil facilities in the Gulf, which they are doing as we speak? Anyhow, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you, Angie, for joining us on the broadcast. Peter, thank you very much for your time as well.